Hi, everybody. Welcome to Tragedy to Triumph podcast with Dave Roever. I am Kim Chapin, your co-host. Really excited today to have a special guest with us on this episode, Dr. R.E.A.P, who is my uncle. It is Dave's brother, and we're really blessed to have him sharing his story, his testimony, as well as a little bit about what we do in prison ministries with R.E.A.P International. So settle in and enjoy this episode with Dave Roever and R.E.A.P.
Well, today I'm very, very excited to have my brother on board with me. I'm in the Navy, so you're on board, Brother Al.
Oh, okay.
For folks that have followed this ministry, and if you're new to this podcast, you need to know that he's been my brother all of my life. So it's not like a adopted brother. He and I have wrestled from the time we were children until we were...
Until you beat up on me.
Until I finally got bigger than you and beat up on you. And that was your senior year of college. No, my senior year of high school, your freshman year of college. Al, I'm glad to have you here. Dr. R.E.A.P. I know he doesn't care for all the titles, but anybody that can graduate from Rice University or Texas University of Theology, I think you deserve to be called doctor. I mean it, Al, and I'm very honored that you're on here. Folks that know Rice University know that's not what you call a Christian university.
Exactly.
But we've done everything together. My goodness, what we've done together is crazy. But I'm glad to have you on board, Doc. Talk to me a minute. Where are you in your walk with the Lord right now? Just a quick question.
Well, I'm basically about as excited as you can get. Sometimes I when I stop and realize how old I am, I was thinking in my younger years, what's it going to be like? When I'm in my 80s, what is that going to be like? And you know what it's like? It's like it was in the 50s, 70s, 80s. It's just life. You just go on. You get up in the morning and I still have this because this morning at 4:00, I'm waking up, looking at the clock. I stayed in bed for maybe 30, 40 minutes, trying to go back to sleep, letting my brain just roll, and boom, I had a thought. And I mean, that thought hit me like a ton of bricks. And so just before 5:00, this thing is just rolling over in my head. Now, there's no way I was going to go back to sleep. So I got up, went in my office in my house and started working on some stuff on the computer. But that thing, it's still, if I ever get to the place where I can't get excited when God shows me something, that'll be time to hang it up.
I agree, because I've never, in my lifetime, I've never known anybody more excited about the gospel, preaching the gospel, teaching the gospel, living the gospel than my brother, Dr. R.E.A.P. And I mean that. What people don't understand is we've been buddies, not just brothers.
Oh, yeah.
We've worked together all of our life, ever since your commitment to Christ and my dedication to Christ. We've been brothers in Christ as much as brothers in the flesh, totally bound together and delivering the goods. Man, we've done some great stuff together. And what I really want people to do is I want them to get to know you a little bit, Al. We've done podcasts that were done before we even had a podcast.
Yeah.
But now we're on a podcast, and they need to know who you are.
Well, I have flashbacks to things. And just while you were talking, I had a flashback to the prison that was down here, South Fort Worth. And we were down in a hole, the two of us were. You were watching my homemade concrete saw. Now, in a prison and cutting concrete, usually that would be suspect. But it was in the wide open spaces, and I was cutting a passage through a concrete wall about 4 feet. And this was all going to be tied together to have something
they
else
were rebuilding
cut in.
or reconstructing the prison system.
And so I was cutting away, and you were watching. You had been instrumental in finding some of the parts, the motors, the engine, the
generator,
alternator
off of B6
some kind of.
It came out with B-52 bomber.
And so, we had all this stuff working, and it's working great. That was the first job I did with that saw. But what set it completely apart was I had to shut it off and relocate the saw, which was mounted to the concrete. And you said, Al, there's some kids up there, look. So I looked up, and a boy and a girl, older teenagers, were standing right on the edge of that pit looking down at us. And you said, I think they're deaf, and I'm going to go talk to them. So here you are with your hand, and you're going to talk sign language.
I speak sign language with a lisp.
Yeah. And so my first thought was, how in the world is he going to talk to them? But see, the rest of the story was you came down about 30 minutes later. I finished up. We're packing up, and you said, I just led those 2 kids to Jesus. And I'm thinking, people with all their faculties, all of their abilities, they don't look for those opportunities. Yeah. And people can talk about, I talk about evangelists, and how evangelists are. And I remember when I was a teenager, we had evangelists coming all the time. They certainly were not my heroes. They were your heroes, but they weren't mine. And so, evangelists made me lie more than anybody I ever knew. Because
you're crazy.
They would always say, all right, now, how many of you will commit to read your Bible 1 hour a day from now on? Yeah, my hand. And I wasn't going to read my Bible for an hour a day. And I knew it when I was raising my hand that I wasn't going to. So, for people who worry about church and all that stuff, you can still make it. You can still make it through and still come out on the other side with a genuine, real, solid commitment. Not to read your Bible every day, maybe, but to read it whenever the Holy Spirit says read. Read it till, like Mom said, read it till it talks to you.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So that's where I wound up, and it's worked out pretty good.
Yes, it has. I was thinking about people might be saying, sign language, who knows sign language? Well, you and I were highly influenced by my English teacher in high school, Karen Cruz. And she came from a family, I think, of 9, and I think 6 of them were deaf.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. And Karen Cruz Crump today is one of the finest women you'll ever come across in your lifetime. And matter of fact, I hope one day to have her on our podcast. As comes to my mind now. But she taught us sign language, and she taught it in the university. But I learned sign language when I had all my fingers and all my mind. And I lost both. But whenever I was injured, my hands were blown apart. My right hand was severed in half, and 3 fingers came off. These 3 fingers hanging by tendon. This thumb, as you can see, wasn't attached then, hanging by a tendon. And I was pumping blood out of an open artery because a sniper shot me while I was holding a hand grenade, trying to throw it in Vietnam. And the only finger left attached was this one. But the deaf, they how do I put this? They can understand position as much as they can anything else.
That's right. And
the position of the hand was important. So I can talk sign language with crooked fingers, and they understand my words. And so, I did. Another time, I stopped one time with my family to get something to eat at a truck stop. And a lot of cars, don't go to a truck stop without many cars. If there's no cars there, don't eat their food. A lot of cars there. We got in, waited on a table. There were 6 or 8 of these folks sitting around deaf. They were drinking their margaritas or Bloody Marys or something and talking away in foul language. I could read their signs. They didn't know I could. So I'm sitting over there. Now, this is right after I got out of the hospital. My hands were ready. They were a mess. Because I don't even have a thumb on it. It didn't even have that thumb yet. Matter of fact, that was installed later. They made it from my hip, so I called it a thip. And I was sitting there watching, and my wife and Kim, my daughter, who hosts here, and my son, they were just little tykes. I said to Brad, I'm going to go over and visit with them. So I went over and sat down and said, hi, my name's Dave Roever. And they looked at me and they said, you understand sign language? I said, yeah. So I started talking to them with these hands. I let the whole table, the next thing I know, pushing all the alcohol back, the language cleared up. I led them in a sinner's prayer and walked away saying, God, who's going to follow up on them?
Yeah.
Who's going to follow up on them? Tore me up.
Well, I guess that's probably one of the biggest things that have faced over 50 years.
Both of us.
That's cool. This month, 50 years ago, I was ordained. This month, April of 76.
How about that?
So, and I've thought about that the same thing. I've always tried, and whenever I was doing a organized outreach, I always made sure there was a pastor of a local church that was there.
Exactly, because you were big in the helping in the instruction of our crusade counselors, we call them, or prayer partners.
Right.
As you know, I worked with Dr. Billy Graham for 9 years and spoke in the great crusades and learned how to go in before crusade a year in advance and train people so that we would not have people coming to Christ and no place to go afterwards.
Right.
So here's what I'd like to do. I want to segue something here. We believe in follow-up.
Oh, absolutely.
Then it's up to the believer, the new believer, to stick to it, stay with it, not lose their direction. Let's talk about both of those two things for a moment, Al. You've already opened that door. It's been a good segue. We believe in discipleship. What is the value of and meaning of true discipleship? Value and meaning of it.
Well, it's being committed to a person. And you know, that's kind of a different way to say it. But most of the time, you have a discipler and a disciple. And so there's a commitment there to the person. As you know, what we're doing today in our worldwide discipleship program, which, by the way, we're well over 600,000 students now in our
48 countries and 14 languages, something like that.
It's not quite 48 countries, a little over 40 countries.
Okay,
and so these are people who are committed not as much to a person, although there is, wherever country we're in, we have people who are certified teachers.
Yeah.
Who carry on and keep motivating, and at least they're there to answer questions for the individual. But the individual is digging into 36 books.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's amazing, and I don't want to spend a lot of time, but it blows my mind that in places, you know, in the Philippines and in other countries.
Vietnam, Uganda, places you never dreamed.
We just go in and give a test, find a few people that can pass the test. They become the teachers. We get it organized, train them, show them how to develop it. The next thing you know, we got 1,200 disciples in that community and 2 or 3 teaching centers.
Our goal is to disciple disciplers, to train trainers.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, with that said, I believe people can understand that we believe that Jesus is still the answer. So he's the one we want people to be discipled to. What do we do to get people to understand, stay with the course. Don't alter your course. Talk to me, Al. God's put that in your heart. I want to hear what you got to say about it.
Well, it is heavy, and I have some specific things that I want to touch on, but you know, we grew up in church.
Yeah.
We grew up. How many times did you get saved as a teenager?
I can't count them all. I got saved, called to preach more times than most people go to eat breakfast.
You know, we kept the statistics all messed up every summer at youth camp, you know, because we got saved again, baptized again, called to preach again, you know, just over and over again. And so we certainly did not have anything to recommend us as talking about staying with the program.
Yeah.
I remember one time a guy that his last name was North. I can't remember his first name, but he and I
Not Chuck.
No, we were driving home after youth camp. It had a really good youth camp, and we were talking about how great it was. He said, you know, I think I got enough to last about 6 weeks this year.
I predicted the end of it right there.
So that we're not talking about staying. We're talking about how long before we walk off.
I actually had a guy tell me, he said, I'm taking a hiatus from my work with the Lord and rest a little bit, then I'll get started again.
It's really, there's a mentality of growing up in church where it becomes all so familiar, and familiarity breeds contempt.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It becomes games, and later on when you and I were doing youth camps, and I saw it in kids so often that they took things so lightly, and I mean sometimes I would have to just bear down. When I was doing the camps in Mississippi, I would just bear down on them and say, "You cannot act like that and say you're a Christian."
Right.
I'm a Christian. No, you can't act like that and say you're a Christian. And some of that didn't make you real popular, but it did. Some of those kids today are staying with have stayed with the program for 20 years.
Yes.
And they're making it. They're doing something for the kingdom of God. So that's where we started out, and they started out. You did much quicker than I. You were 16, called to preach, and made your commitment was made. Mine wasn't. It really wasn't. I went through high school, went to college, and there's a lot I could say, but I thought I was Christian. I thought I was living pretty straight, man. I never went to a movie. I was a good Christian. I never went to a movie. I wouldn't even go to the dances, for just to have fellowship. Because we don't dance, we don't
smoke, and we don't chew, and we don't go with girls that do.
So all of that stuff, was just part of what we were, what made us what we were. We each one had to follow our own journey, come to the point of following our own destiny.
Yeah.
And I've told you this a number of times, but Steve the other day asked me, he said, just tell me a little bit about your relationship with Dave and what happened whenever all this stuff happened. So I said, sure. I was sitting at home, got a letter from Dave. He said, I feel like I'm about to get mine. And I knew exactly what he was talking about.
I remember writing that, Al.
And
I told you where I thought I was going to get it to.
Yeah. Well, you hoped you.
I said I thought I was going to get it in the ass. That's exactly what I said, remember?
And so, see, I'm a little holier than you, so I don't use that word.
Well, I got it in the face, which was even better.
So we, I was really shook up by it. And I remember leaving the house, going to the coffee club. We had a coffee house ministry in Fort Worth. And on the way, I started crying so hard I just couldn't drive. I pulled over on the side of the road and right in front of Mrs. Baird's Bakery. And I sat there until I could get control of my emotions, and I said, God, you're going to bring him back just fine, no problem. And I went on to work, And so 2 weeks later, sitting in church on a Sunday morning, and Dad had just done the dismissal prayer, and Mom was sitting on the front, and she turned around and looked back, and she screamed. And she said, something's happened to Dave. And I looked back, and two guys in navy white, came through the back door, and they were waiting. So Mom and Dad went with one of them back into a Sunday school room, and the other one stepped outside. So I just followed him out. He didn't know who I was. And I said, well, what happened to Mr. Roever? So he told me point blank, and basically he said he's not going to make it. There's just no way you can go through what his body went through with the almost 50% third degree burn, 5,000 degree. I said, what?
Yeah.
He said, yeah, you take a white phosphorus grenade, lay it on a 3-inch steel plate, just a few seconds, it burns all the way through it. And I said, and he got that on him. He said, yeah, almost half. And so at that moment, I got mad at God. And I think I was justified,
Yeah.
I had turned you over to God to take care of you. And this happened. And so I just basically said, God, I won't be talking to you for a while. And I did. I just shut down. I didn't pray, didn't read the Bible. I didn't backslide. I was just, moving apart and not really wanting to deal with the spiritual aspects of what was going on in my life, in our life as a family, and your life as an individual. It was months. We actually, Arnita, my wife, and I moved to Houston. We were still in Fort Worth there after we got married. We moved to Houston, but we couldn't come see you until you were out of the intensive care. And I remember the day that, we got the word we could come, and so we took off. I'll never forget, you were driving from Houston to San Antonio, and we had a little 68 Firebird, Pontiac Firebird 350.
It'd move.
4 on the floor, and it would move, and she was doing about 100, and all of a sudden I heard a whoop, and I looked back, and she had already taken her foot off, but it was 95, so it had slowed down before I looked at I thought, well, she's got it this time. And the guy walked up, he said, I suppose you realize you were driving pretty fast. And I just went, because if he couldn't tell her exactly what she was driving, then he couldn't give her a ticket. She didn't get a ticket. But we got on there, I walked into hell itself, that open area, the what they call that?
The burn ward.
Yeah, the burn ward. Yeah. And looking at all of the
mutilation.
Oh,
guys with no legs suspended by the bones out of their thigh, suspended upside down so they wouldn't bleed to death right then. They bled to death eventually.
All that stuff.
100% third degree, 10%.
And a constant background of screaming.
Yeah, never stopped.
That was the thing that I think just brought me down almost. I just thinking of every scream was pain. Somebody was hurting. And so I was standing there looking at you, and, just right down the half there, Brenda was rubbing the good side of your head and, just rubbing her fingertips. And I'm standing there looking, and a medic walked up. He's in the little green gown, whatever that is. But he came walk up, and I say little because I'm real short, and he was shorter. He's almost a head shorter than me. His head came just about my shoulder, a little bit above it. So he walked right up beside me, and he's standing there, and he's looking at you, and he's looking around, looking at me. And finally he said, "Are you kin to him?" I said, "Yeah, he's my brother." And tears started down his face. And he said, "I've never met a man like him." And when he said it, he turned around. He was kind of embarrassed about the tears, I could tell, and he took off. And I sat there, and I had a revelation. I had something that happened, and I said, "God, I'm sorry. You have everything under control. And wherever this takes Dave, wherever it takes me, I'm going with you."
Yeah.
And that day, I got my first glimpse of the fact, and this is a word that a lot of people don't, they don't care much about the Greek words, but I do because I love studying languages anyway. And this particular 5-letter word, T-E-L-O-S, telos, it's a Greek word, and most of the time people translate it purpose or end. But it's not the end in the sense of something coming to an end. It's an end in the sense of something reaching what it's actually for.
Yeah.
And so I knew a little bit about telos, and I'm thinking about it, and I realized that God has a telos for everybody. Everybody that is born with a telos. And I'm using the word telos specifically instead of the word purpose. because, and this is funny, because I did this little thing with Bing just a few weeks, maybe 2 weeks ago. I go on Microsoft Bing, what are the differences and the similarities between word purpose and telos? And so the AI printed it out, 2 columns, the differences.
Uh-huh.
And I had already, most of that I had already kind of figured out, but it was point by point. I mean, just very clear. And almost everything else that I looked up when I looked it up was just synonyms. They're synonyms.
Yeah.
But what Bing told me was, your purpose is something you're born with. Your telos is something you're born with. Right. Your purpose is a choice you make of how you're going to get to your telos.
It's like destiny and destination almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that AI is not really AI. That's A-L. That's Al. So you knew it before AI did.
Well, whatever. It's really had me talk. We've talked so much about our destiny.
Yeah.
About the journey. Yeah, I have a book I started. The journey started in the title was The Road Started in Eden. Because Adam and Eve sinned. Yeah. They were kicked out of the garden after they sinned. They couldn't go back. So from that point, everything was moving away from the garden,
right.
But come to find out, moving back toward another garden.
The Garden of Gethsemane?
Yeah, well, actually, the other garden is heaven. It's when you walk into it. It's a road that comes into the heavenly city.
That's in Revelation.
Yeah, it is. And so I had seen that a long time ago that you come out of Eden, but you go all the way through. However many thousands of years, however long it was, but you're on the journey. Now, and you tell me how you relate to this is, a lot of people say it's not about the destination, it's about the journey.
Interesting.
So, how do you relate to that?
I remember a story, and I don't know if I get it straight because I only heard it once. I'm going to try to remember it, of a missionary that went to an island, and they gave him a seashell as a gift, and he was very grateful and thanked them, and publicly was kind. But he put it on a shelf, and it was just there. One day someone came in and saw it and said, "Oh, do you know what that is?" He said, "Yeah, it's a seashell." He said, "No, it's not just a seashell. The only place in the world that shell can be found is on the other side of this island, and whoever gave that to you had to walk not only miles, there's no road, it's not only that, and you cannot wear shoes because the lava is so sharp it wears out the shoes, and they literally walk barefooted across that to get to that one place that shell is available." Well, he was so moved, he went back and thanked them over and over for the shell. They said, "Well, the shell is not the gift. It's in the journey." Mm-hmm. That's the gift. I don't know how that plays into what you're saying or asking me, but here's my point. I started following Christ when I was 16 years old, gave my heart to Christ. Now, I did that when I was 5 years old, but I didn't know what it meant. I do remember, Al, I remember praying, "Jesus, forgive me of all my sins." What I also remember is I didn't know what sin was. Mm-hmm. I'm asking, forgive me, something I didn't know what it was. I just heard it was bad, but I didn't know what bad for what. But I had a heart for God at 5 years old. 11 years later, I'm 16, I met a girl. I found out what sin was, and boy, did I like it. Woo! And I knew that if I followed my heart, I could not do that. If I followed my flesh, my carnal mind, I would regret it the rest of my life. And I asked God when I was 16, 11 years after I'd given my heart to Christ at 5, not knowing what it meant, I asked God to go back, remember the prayer of a little boy. And he did. And that day I was forgiven of my sin. I had come out of the closet of ignorance into a light of awareness, and I was fully responsible for knowing what sin was and whether I followed or not. made my commitment to Christ that day. I've never turned back on that commitment. Now, have I made mistakes? You better know it. We all do. And I'm not saying that to justify myself. I'm responsible for me and my mistakes. But I've also learned there's a thing called progressive sanctification. That's what I call it. There are times I wish that I could be saved and never, ever even have the desire to sin again. But that is the battle that we fight till the last breath. And until the last breath, we do not hear, well done, thou good and faithful servant, because that is reserved for the servant that stays well done. Now, I prefer when you're burned, I'd rather be medium rare than well done, thou good and faithful servant. I think God said that to me on the bank of the river when I was lit up at 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Well done, Dave. Oh, Lord, that's terrible. I hope that wasn't sacrilegious, but my point is this. The journey has been so utterly fascinating. Every day's got its battles, but the war was won not by me. The war was won by Christ. I'm battling to be seated in that throne with him, even as he's seated in the throne with his Father. And by faith, I am already there.
Exactly.
I gave my heart to Christ, and he's never given it back.
Well, I followed a different journey. By the time I
remember
got to my senior year, I was an atheist. I had bought in. It wasn't science that got me. It was philosophy, and really it was. It wasn't even a battle. I just got so comfortable with the, especially existentialism. I got so comfortable with the philosophies, and I bought into the nothingness of existentialism. That being is more important than anything that you just are. And there's no reason, no purpose, you just are. You're just in an empty universe. Everything is absurd. And, I learned all that stuff, especially the French existentialism, because I was majoring in French. And so I was really getting into that and buying in. And, one of my roommates, we've been roommates 3.5 years. Or we wound up 3.5 years. But that last year, he asked me.
This was when you were at Rice University?
Yeah, while I was at Rice. He asked me, he said, doesn't your conscience ever hurt you? I said, I don't have a conscience. I said, I'm an animal, and that's it. I just do whatever I feel like doing. When I feel like doing it, nothing else matters. And he was really shook up about it. There's a lot of things happened along through that, through that total experience. But by the time I'm starting my last semester of my senior year, nothing mattered. So I didn't do anything. I had a 0 in my French class. No, not French. I'm sorry. I had a 0 in my German class. I did take 1 year of German just because my granddad was German, so I thought, well, I'll throw that in. Man, it's tough. I shouldn't have tried. But I had a 0, literally a 0. I had not done one thing in that whole semester. My math class, I hadn't turned in one homework assignment. I had done good on the test because I loved the class. I loved the mathematics, and it was elementary symbolic logic, and so still is one of the best classes I ever had, but I just never turned in the work. And so then I had failed to turn in any work in my poetry class. Flunking poetry is kind of, that's about the low end, as low as you can go to flunk poetry. And so,
roses are red, violets are blue. I like peanuts. Can you swim?
So I'm just going through this whole semester. I'm drunk almost every night, and I'm having weird experiences. One, I don't know if I even ever shared this with you, but I had come in pretty much what Dad used to call 3 sheets to the wind, in the wind, and I'd come in, gone to bed, and I'm laying there, and I'm thinking of some things I had learned in quantum physics, and I was thinking about the fact that a photon hitting an electron in an atom causes the electron to jump from one level to another level. And they used to say it was instantaneous. They're kind of modifying that now, but anyhow, I'm thinking this thing, about, okay, the photon comes in and it hits the electron, and the electron is suddenly translated from that level to the next level. And I sat up in bed. I said, that's how it's going to happen. And my roommate was asleep up on the bunk above me in that trailer house we lived in. And he said, what? I said, the rapture, that's the way it's going to happen. Then I just laid down and went to sleep. I don't know what in the world, what caused that to happen in my head. But
that's 4 sheets to the wind.
Yeah. So the Sunday before the last month of my school year, I had 2 weeks of classes and then 2 weeks of final exams. And that Sunday night, I got saved. And I can honestly say that it was the first time in my life I was saved. Yeah. All that time I thought I was getting saved and backsliding, I was not saved. And I'm going to say something. It may make some people mad, but I don't believe you can say you're saved if you're living that kind of a lifestyle of in and out, up and down. Well, I just hope I'm saved whenever Jesus comes. Yeah. No, you ain't going to be saved. You're not. It's just, I had all kinds of emotional experiences. I could quote scripture, man, all kinds of stuff. But I was not born again till that Sunday night. And that Sunday night, I was born again.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. Up my head, soles to my feet. I was born again.
And then what happened?
I did a whole semester of classes in my math, my German, and my British poetry, and I passed everything.
Now, you tell me if God didn't have his hand on your life. That's sweet.
God touched my brain. I mean, literally,
this is Rice University, bro. This isn't George's or Butch's School of Higher Learning.
No.
We're talking about Rice University. Man, that's one of the most academically highest achievements you can get to.
I remember asking God, I said, I know I don't deserve it. I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but I'm asking, will you help me? And he did.
And the fact that you were accepted in that school, I had several letters from universities, but I went to one of them anyway. Yeah. Al, our time's going to be up here, but I got to tell you, you did a part of the movie that Billy Graham did on my life. They interviewed you, and it's called Scars That Heal, the true life story of Dave Roever, but it's got your gift of recollection of those moments you alluded to earlier in this program. And if people would like to get this, now this is not a movie done with the expertise and all the, what they call them, special effects of today's computer world. It's done by Worldwide Pictures, sponsored by Dr. Billy Graham. And it tells my story from other people's point of view as well. And I think if any of you that are watching would like to get this, it's very simple to get. It's called Scars That Heal. It's available not only on DVD, for those of you that are like me, kind of slow to change. It's also available on thumb drive. I guess that's called USB. I usually say UPS, but I got it right this time. USB, it's a thumb drive. You can plug it in the side of your TV and it plays. Plug it into your computer, plays. So if you'd like to get that, you can order it and go to daveroever.org. It's right there. Click on products, I think is what it is. I'm learning, And I hope you will take the time to do that. And also, if you'd like to make a comment, or please do that. If you want to talk to my brother Al, who you can see right away, he's a genius, and that's more literal than figurative. He doesn't like me to say that, but it's true. He has a very high IQ. I guess he'd pass Donald Trump's review for smartness. But if you'd like to comment or call, or you go to the daveroever.org and give you all the instruction on how to do that. And those of you that would like to support the ministry, I encourage you to do it. Spend some time on our website. Look at what we do, where we do it, and why we do it. We also have a prison ministry. We didn't get into that in this program, but my brother is over that. We're working through Global University with that program, and it's very, very, very already deep into success. We have about 500 students, I think, right now, and we're just getting started. So we'll have 5,000 before you know it. Thank you for taking the time to watch. Listen, do me a favor, please. Would you like us on our webpage or on our website or whatever it's called here, our podcast? You can see I'm new at this, and I'm glad to be a virgin at it, so you can help me here. And share what you've heard today. All of our podcasts are available. Go back to the very beginning. We only started in January. We're just getting started. Our reels hit 60-something thousand already, but our podcasts are just getting started. We want you to share them, like them, and make comments. Thanks for watching today. I'm Dave Roever, and I think Kim, my daughter, has a thing or two to say in closing.
Well, thanks again for tuning in to this episode of Tragedy to Triumph with Dave Roever. We really enjoyed having Al on the episode today. If you liked this episode, we encourage you to share it. Go to our YouTube page or wherever you listen to your podcast. Like it, subscribe, and share. If you're interested in getting a copy of Scars That Heal, we have that on our website. You can go to the products page at daveroever.org. It's a great movie, and I think it really encapsulates Dave's story as well as just the powerful message of Tragedy to Triumph, our namesake for this podcast. Anyway, thanks for watching. We'll catch you again next time.